what am I talking about? Something is fucking wrong.
The entertainment industry is in absolute shock right now over what might be the biggest and most devastating talent exodus in franchise history. The main cast of the Kelvin Timeline Star Trek films, Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Zoe Saldana, Carl Urban, John Cho, and Simon Pegg, have reportedly signed massive exclusive deals with Disney to join the Star Wars universe. We're not talking about one actor making a career move. We're talking about the entire core cast of Star Trek's most recent film series collectively abandoning the franchise that made them famous and jumping ship to Star Trek's biggest rival. And according to multiple sources, the message these actors sent to Paramount was crystal clear. We're done with Star Trek. This is absolutely catastrophic for Paramount and for the Star Trek franchise. This isn't just losing one Captain Kirk like when Chris Pine quit over creative differences. This is losing Kirk, Spock, Uhura, Bones, Sulu, and Scotty all at once. This is the complete destruction of any possibility of continuing the Kelvin Timeline films. This is Star Trek's entire modern movie cast telling Paramount that they have so little faith in the franchise's future that they're willing to become the enemy, to put on stormtrooper armor and wield lightsabers for the competition. And Disney? Disney just pulled off one of the most aggressive and brilliant talent acquisitions in Hollywood history. They didn't just sign a few actors for individual projects. They signed the entire Star Trek movie cast to exclusive multi-picture deals that will make them major players in the Star Wars universe for years to come. Disney saw Paramount's dysfunction and Star Trek's creative failures and essentially poached an entire franchise's worth of talent in one coordinated move. Let's break down exactly what happened, why these actors made this shocking decision, what Disney is planning to do with them, and what this means for both Star Trek and Star Wars going forward. The exodus apparently started with Chris Pine, which makes sense given that he was the first to publicly quit Star Trek after the Starfleet Academy disaster and Paramount's refusal to make meaningful changes to the franchise's creative direction. According to sources, after Chris made his decision to leave Star Trek, he was immediately approached by Disney executives who had been watching the Star Trek situation unfold with great interest. Disney apparently saw an opportunity. Star Trek was imploding with canceled shows, departing talent, and fan rebellion over quality issues. Meanwhile, Star Wars had its own challenges with some recent projects receiving mixed reception, and Disney was looking for fresh talent and new energy to inject into the franchise. The idea of bringing in Chris Pine, who had successfully played one of science fiction's most iconic characters, was incredibly appealing. Disney reportedly offered Chris a multi-picture deal to join the Star Wars universe, in a significant role, not as a cameo or supporting character, but as a major player who would anchor new films or series. The money was substantial. Reports suggest somewhere in the range of $50 to $75 million for multiple projects over several years, far more than Paramount had ever been willing to pay Chris for Star Trek. But more important than the money was the creative pitch. Disney apparently promised Chris that his Star Wars projects would be made by top-tier filmmakers, would have proper budgets and production values, would focus on compelling storytelling and characters rather than heavy-handed political messaging, and would actually get made rather than languishing in development hell like Star Trek IV had for nearly a decade. Chris apparently said yes almost immediately. But then he did something that Paramount probably never saw coming. He started talking to his fellow Star Trek cast members about joining him. According to insiders, Chris told Zachary Quinto, Zoe Saldana, and the others about Disney's offer and suggested that they could all leave Star Trek together and become part of something bigger and better managed. The pitch to the other cast members was apparently simple. Star Trek is dying. Paramount doesn't know how to fix it. You've been waiting nearly 10 years for them to make Star Trek IV, and it's never happening. So why not jump to a franchise that actually makes movies and actually values its talent? One by one, the Kelvin cast members apparently agreed. Zachary Quinto, who played Spock, reportedly had his own frustrations with Paramount after years of false starts on Star Trek IV and watching the franchise's quality decline on Paramount+. Zoe Saldana, already a major star from Avatar and Guardians of the Galaxy, didn't need Star Trek for her career and was happy to move on to a franchise with more stability and better creative vision. Karl Urban, who played Bones McCoy, has been one of the most vocal cast members about wanting to do Star Trek 4, but even he apparently reached a breaking point after the combination of the Starfleet Academy disaster, Chris Pine quitting, and Paramount's continued inability to get their act together. John Cho and Simon Pegg, who have both been diplomatic about Star Trek in public, apparently privately agreed that the franchise was in terminal decline and that Disney's offer represented a much better opportunity. According to reports, Disney signed all 6 of the main Kelvin cast members to exclusive deals that prevent them from appearing in competing science fiction franchises, which effectively locks them out of Star Trek even if Paramount somehow tried to lure them back. The deals are reportedly structured so that each actor will appear in multiple Star Wars projects over the next 5 to 7 years, with opportunities to play different characters across films, streaming series, and potentially animated projects. The announcement of these deals apparently blindsided Paramount executives who were still hoping they could eventually bring the Kelvin cast back for Star Trek 4 or other projects. According to insiders, Paramount had been in ongoing conversations with representatives for some of the actors, still trying to negotiate terms for potential future Star Trek films, when they suddenly learned that all of those actors had signed exclusive deals with Disney. The reaction at Paramount was reportedly a combination of shock, anger, and panic. Star Trek 4 was already functionally dead after Chris Pine quit, but there had still been some hope that they could eventually work things out with the cast, or find a way to continue the Kelvin timeline. Now that option is completely gone. The entire cast has left the building and signed with the competition, but the real devastation came when sources revealed what message the cast members sent to Paramount, along with their decisions to leave. According to multiple reports, the actors collectively communicated to Paramount executives that they were done with Star Trek because they had lost faith in Paramount's ability to manage the franchise properly and make content that honored what Star Trek should be. The actors reportedly expressed frustration about waiting nearly a decade for Star Trek 4 while watching Paramount make bad decisions about the franchise on Paramount Plus, drive away legacy cast members like Patrick Stewart through creative disagreements, and cancel shows like Starfleet Academy after one season because they were so poorly received. They said they couldn't continue being associated with a franchise that was being so badly mismanaged. This message is absolutely brutal for Paramount because it validates every criticism that fans and observers have been making about how they've handled Star Trek. When your entire movie cast quits and publicly says they're done because of mismanagement, that's not just losing talent, that's a vote of no confidence that does permanent damage to the franchise's reputation. Now let's talk about what Disney is planning to do with this incredible influx of talent. According to sources with knowledge of Disney's plans, the company is developing multiple Star Wars projects specifically designed to showcase the former Star Trek cast in major roles. Chris Pine is reportedly being positioned as the lead in a new trilogy of Star Wars films set in a previously unexplored time period. The role would be similar to what he did with Kirk, playing a charismatic leader who commands loyalty and makes difficult decisions, but in the Star Wars universe. Disney apparently sees Chris as someone who can anchor a new era of Star Wars films and bring in audiences who might not have been interested in recent Star Wars projects. Zachary Quinto is reportedly being developed for a Jedi-focused series on Disney+, where he would play a complex, Force-sensitive character dealing with moral ambiguity and the gray areas between light and dark. The role apparently plays to Zachary's strengths in portraying intelligent, conflicted characters, similar to how he played Spock, but with more emotional range. Zoe Saldana is being positioned for a major role in an upcoming Star Wars film, potentially as a new type of character that the franchise hasn't featured prominently before. Given Zoe's experience playing strong action-oriented characters in Avatar and Guardians of the Galaxy, Disney is apparently building something that showcases those abilities in the Star Wars context. Karl Urban is reportedly being developed for a series about a grizzled soldier or mercenary operating in the criminal underworld of the Star Wars galaxy, something that would let him bring the same kind of sardonic humor and toughness he brought to Bones, but in a completely different context. John Cho and Simon Pegg are reportedly being packaged together for a buddy comedy action series set in the Star Wars universe, playing a pair of smugglers or rogues who get caught up in larger conflicts. The pitch apparently leans into the chemistry they developed as Sulu and Scotty and translates it to characters who are less heroic and more self-interested than their Star Trek counterparts. What's brilliant about Disney's approach is that they're not just plugging these actors into existing Star Wars projects. They're building new corners of the Star Wars universe specifically designed around the talents and strengths of the former Star Trek cast. Disney is essentially using Paramount's failure to properly utilize this incredible ensemble of talent as an opportunity to expand and diversify their own franchise. The fan reaction to this news has been absolutely massive and completely divided. Star Trek fans are devastated and furious. They're watching the cast they embraced as the modern embodiments of Kirk, Spock, and the Enterprise crew abandon Star Trek for Star Wars. Social media is filled with angry posts about how Paramount destroyed Star Trek through incompetence and drove away the talent that could have sustained the franchise for another generation. Many Star Trek fans are also conflicted because while they're angry at the actors for leaving, they understand why they left. It's hard to blame Chris Pine and the others for choosing a franchise that actually makes films and values its talent over one that can't get its act together and has been in creative decline for years. Star Wars fans, meanwhile, are excited and intrigued by the possibilities. They're getting an injection of proven talent into their franchise, actors who have demonstrated they can carry major science fiction films and who bring different energy than what Star Wars has had recently. There's genuine curiosity about how these actors will fit into the Star Wars universe and what new stories Disney will tell with them. There's also a subset of fans who love both Star Trek and Star Wars who are experiencing genuine whiplash at this situation. The idea of Captain Kirk, Spock, and the Enterprise crew essentially switching sides to the Star Wars universe is surreal and feels almost like betrayal, even though logically they're just actors taking better job opportunities. Industry observers are calling this one of the biggest talent coups in franchise history. Disney didn't just sign a few actors, they effectively destroyed Paramount's ability to continue their Star Trek film franchise while simultaneously strengthening their own Star Wars franchise. It's aggressive, it's brilliant business, and it's absolutely devastating for Paramount. The implications of this exodus for Star Trek are catastrophic. First and most obviously, there will be no more Kelvin timeline films. Star Trek IV was already dead when Chris Pine quit, but now even the theoretical possibility of reviving it is gone. Paramount can't recast the entire crew, and they can't make Kelvin timeline films without the actors who defined those characters. Second, this sends a message to any other talent considering working on Star Trek that the franchise is in serious trouble. If your entire movie cast abandons ship to join the competition, that tells everyone in Hollywood that Star Trek is a sinking ship. Directors, writers, and actors who might have been interested in Star Trek projects will now think twice about getting involved. Third, this validates every negative narrative about Star Trek's mismanagement. Paramount can try to spin this however they want, but the story is clear. They fumbled the franchise so badly that they lost their entire cast to their biggest competitor. That's a level of failure that's hard to overcome. Fourth, this might be the final nail in the coffin for theatrical Star Trek films. Paramount has no clear path to making Star Trek movies now. They could try to launch a completely new film series with a new cast, but that would be starting from scratch and competing with all the Star Trek content on Paramount+. They could focus entirely on streaming shows, but those have had mixed success at best. For Star Wars and Disney, the implications are entirely positive. They've acquired a talented ensemble of actors who have proven they can carry major science fiction franchises. They've dealt a significant blow to a competing franchise, and they've created opportunities to expand the Star Wars universe in new directions with fresh perspectives. Disney is also sending a message to talent throughout Hollywood. If you're frustrated with how your current studio is managing your franchise, come to Disney where projects actually get made and talent is actually valued. That's a powerful recruiting pitch. The most stunning aspect of this entire situation is how completely preventable it was. Paramount could have made Star Trek 4 years ago if they'd been willing to pay the cast fairly and commit to the project. They could have maintained quality control on their Paramount Plus shows and avoided disasters like Starfleet Academy. They could have listened to Chris Pine, Patrick Stewart, and other talent when they raised concerns about creative direction. Instead, Paramount made bad decision after bad decision, prioritized short-term cost-cutting over long-term franchise health, allowed shows to be made that damaged the Star Trek brand, and ultimately drove away the talent that represented Star Trek's future, and now they're paying the price. "We're done with Star Trek" isn't just a statement from the Kelvin cast. It's becoming the epitaph for the entire franchise. When your movie stars, your legacy cast members, and significant portions of your fan base have all essentially said they're done because of mismanagement, how do you recover from that? The answer might be that you don't. Star Trek might continue to exist in some form. There will probably still be shows on Paramount+, there might be novels and comics and other licensed products, but Star Trek as a major entertainment franchise, with cultural relevance and the ability to compete with Star Wars and Marvel, might be over. The Kelvin cast abandoning Star Trek for Star Wars is the clearest possible signal that the franchise is in terminal decline. And unless Paramount makes dramatic changes, new leadership, new creative vision, new commitment to quality, Star Trek's fall from grace will be complete. The irony of Star Trek's greatest modern stars joining Star Wars, the franchise that Star Trek fans have competed with for decades, is almost too much to bear. But that's the reality Paramount created through years of incompetence and mismanagement. The war between Star Trek and Star Wars just ended, and Star Wars won by capturing the enemy's best soldiers. That's the story of how Paramount lost Star Trek, and it's a cautionary tale about what happens when a studio takes a beloved franchise for granted and assumes talent will stick around regardless of how badly the property is managed. The Enterprise crew has abandoned ship, the franchise is sinking, and there's no rescue coming. Star Trek is done.